what's up guys, this video is going to cover the blood compatibility project. We're going to ask the user for their blood type, and then we're going to give them the types they can donate to and the types they can receive from. It follows these rules, which I had to look up because we had a blood drive last week and someone asked me about it and I wasn't sure. Turns out there are a few things that will be rejected if the recipient has never seen them before. So the A antigen, if you have it and the other person doesn't, they won't accept your blood. The B antigen, same thing, and you can have both with the AB type. O is not anything on its own, it's just the neither, it's the lack of those. And then there's a similar effect with the Rh factor protein, which is represented by a plus. If you have it and they don't, they can't take your blood because their immune system will attack it. Minus is nothing on its own, it's just the lack of that. So the chart might make it seem that you have 8 types, 8 on the other end, and 64 possibilities, but we don't actually have to write 64 things. We don't even have to write 6 things. It's simpler than you might think. So what are we going to do? We're going to start with the blood types, and I'm just going to make a constant at the top in all caps. We're going to go O positive, O negative, and then maybe it'll be faster if I copy paste. I don't know. So there are 8 types, and that's not going to change. But yes, in real life, there are a few more things that occasionally come up with someone with a rare antigen or rare lack of antigen that might be relevant. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say, I will write one function to handle one matchup, like one pair, and then we'll figure out how to apply it to different combos. So you could call it compatible. I'm going to call it safe just because that's shorter. And we're going to have one type giving and one type receiving. And then we're going to say, okay, what we want is the lack of those potential factors to be rejected. For example, on the chart you'll see O negative can give to anyone because it doesn't have the A or the B or the plus, the things that would be rejected. And AB plus can only give to itself because it has all the things that can be rejected if the other guy doesn't have them. So we'll say A in donor and A not in recipient. That's like one of the bad things that would rule it out. And with Booleans, you can always go from either angle. You could say we're going to list the bad stuff and say we don't want those, or you can list the good stuff and say we do want those. Python has functions called any and all, which could be useful, or you could just do the classic and or stuff. So I'm going to copy this and change the relevant qualities to what matters, and then we're going to return not any of these. So I could say any, or I could just say this, or either one's totally fine. Honestly, for me, 3 is the borderline. If I have more than 3, I'll definitely use any, but if I have 3 exactly, it's like, yeah, it could be or, whatever. So let's test that out. Let's say safe A positive to O negative, which should be false. And let's do one the other way around, which should be true. Great. Of course, we'll test more, but that's a good start. Not only are we testing for the answer on stuff like this, but we're also just making sure there's no syntax error. Whenever I hit run, that's going to read the code and make sure that it can actually be turned into real Python in the first place. So next, I'm going to make a main function and do the input-output side of things. Input, print, maybe some other stuff. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to call it user for the user's blood type, but you can change their names later, is input your blood type, and then while user not in types, we're going to ask again. Because throughout the rest of the program, we don't want to give our functions a bad string that they wouldn't handle. Maybe they'd have an error, or maybe they'd do something worse and just give a weird answer. But we're not going to let that happen. We're going to gatekeep right at the beginning. Only these will be used. So, well, we should actually say, okay, just in case you accidentally put a space at the end, that's fine, we'll take it off. And just in case you accidentally do lowercase, which I probably will, we'll fix that as well. So let's test that. We're going to say, what if I do a bad one? It'll say, no, no, no. What if I do one that's kind of close, like AO negative? No. But what if I do one that is real? It'll take it and it'll uppercase it to be convenient for me. What if I put a space on the end, which sometimes people do? That's fine, we'll take it. Okay, so that's a good start. Now we have to do the different matchups. So if I say I'm O negative, I have to do 8 possible donations, and some of them are going to work, or maybe all of them will work if I say O negative. And then I have 8 possible donations to me, and so that's kind of 16 things, right? Like the chart had 64, but once you say yours, it's narrowed down to 16. And I still don't want to write 16 lines. I want to use a loop, or there's a function called filter, which would be nice. Or in our class, we recently learned about comprehensions. So I'm going to use that because it's fresh in our minds. Let's see how we could do this with a comprehension. So I'm going to say recipients, meaning the ones receiving from me, could be, so we have to come up with a name. Honestly, this is the most annoying part of a comprehension, is you have to come up with a name for the blood type. I'm going to call it BT just to be short. BT for BT in types, if safe for me to give to them. Okay, so this function will be called for each one of these guys, and the ones that pass the test will get in this new list. It doesn't change the original. And then the donors, meaning the ones who can give to me, are exactly the same but swapped. Just like when I was testing the A positive to O negative or whatever, I can swap the parameters and get a new situation. So now let's say print recipients, print donors, and we'll give a test or two to see how that works. O negative, which should be able to give to everybody. Yep, and only receive from itself, because all the other ones have something that we don't if we're O negative, and it would mess it up. So that looks bad because it has brackets and quotes, and I don't want to see all that. Let's do a tiny bit of formatting. So let's go print, I think at the end we should say, like, your blood type is, and then have a little intro, like, hey guys, we're going to do this. But I don't want to make it too long. So let's say, okay, your blood type, and then you can donate to, and here we're going to go comma join these guys. In newer versions of Python, you can actually use double quotes inside and it'll figure it out, but CodeHS hasn't updated to the recent version, so we have to switch. Like, I use double quotes, so I have to switch to single quotes so that Python can see that they're different. Okay, and then this guy is going to be, you can receive from, I guess it doesn't make sense to have the colon there anymore. let's see. Let's test a different one. Okay, so you could donate to only yourself and then receive from all. Let's do one that's in the middle. So, okay, it's like 2 and 4-ish. Now, let's add a tiny bit of an intro, and I usually like to have that at the top, like a big string that's like, hey guys, here's the deal. And it doesn't take up a bunch of space in the main function. So at the top of the main, we can just say print intro, and you don't have to like scroll past a bunch of stuff. But up here, we're gonna say, okay, blood compatibility, enter your blood type, and learn. I'd use the triple quotes to get a multi-line string so you can space it however you like, but we'll see how it goes. And learn to whom you can donate blood and from whom you can receive blood. And now that we're saying that, and we were also repeating the blood type thing, I'm going to cut this so that it doesn't look weirdly repetitive. And now that we're doing real sentences with capital letters, I'm going to change these, and then we'll test it, and then we're done. That was a nice, well, if it works. Great, cool. O positive is my blood type in real life, and it's, I think, the most common, so it's not that special. But you can donate to anybody with a plus, and you can receive from anybody with an O. Let's try one we haven't done. Yeah, looks good. Totally safe. You can't have errors because we're protecting the input. And this gives a lot of chance to spice it up with more features if you want to ask again, if they want to let them run it from the beginning, or do the percentage like, oh, you have the most common and you can donate to 53% of people, or something like that. Give a minute to think once you try what would be nice to add. There you go.